The Vijayanagara Empire. Today the name conjures up images of tragedy and ruin. From the early 20th century onwards, colonial and nationalist historians have romanticized it as the last Hindu empire, either dismissing or distorting its very real cosmopolitanism and taking attention away from what truly made the 14th to the 16th century CE a remarkable era of South Indian history. Over this time, truly transregional, multilingual empires emerged across the Indian subcontinent, and in the process, diverse new elites moved across its landmass. It wasn't unusual for a Vijayanagara or Deccan Sultanate court to have Telugu, Kannada, Tamil, Marathi, and Persian speakers. But the arrival of new warrior elites also disturbed centuries-old social dynamics. In present-day Tamil Nadu, especially, Vijayanagara martial and governing classes inadvertently created chaos and crisis before finally settling into the thriving South Indian societies we are familiar with today. I'm Anirudh Kanisetti, historian author of Lords of the Deccan. Welcome to Thinking Medieval, where every week we tell you something new about our complex, innovative past. Always feel free to check out our research and citations below, and remember that we're all figuring out how to think about our messy, bloody, dazzling history. In her chapter Instability, Opportunity and Innovation, part of the edited volume Abhyudaya, American historian Leslie Orr recently challenged the conventional division of South India's history into Hindu and Muslim. Instead, she pointed out the inscriptional picture of Tamil Nadu reveals that the situation of the 13th century, on the eve of the Delhi Sultanate's invasion, was quite similar to that of the 14th century when both Delhi and Vijayanagara campaigned in the region. The period of churn continued until a new social formation emerged in the 16th century, nearly 200 years after Vijayanagara had established itself in Tamil Nadu. Now, one of the defining characteristics of the 13th to 16th centuries is the movement of people and the emergence of private property as a powerful economic force. Some migrations had already happened before the 12th century. For example, in the mid to late 11th century, a large number of Tamil-speaking peasant warriors, encouraged by Chola military campaigns, migrated from the areas around present-day Chennai and Kanchipuram into the Kolar region. Here they acted as a ruling class over a mixed peasantry of Kannada and Telugu speakers, issuing a 1072 edict collectively determining the taxes they would pay to the Cholas. By the 12th and 13th centuries, though, the picture was reversed. Distinguished Japanese historian Noboru Karashima, who spent most of his life studying medieval South India, analyzed the period in his monumental works Ancient to Medieval South Indian Society in Transition and History and Society in South India, the Cholas to Vijayanagar. Karashima established that hill peoples who became wealthy by participating in Chola military campaigns moved into the Coromandel plain, purchasing lands from indebted villages. They also used collective organization to lobby for a high socioeconomic position. Simultaneously, other powers, especially the Hoysala kingdom of southern Karnataka, conquered parts of the Kaveri River Valley, bringing with them Kannada-speaking peasantry. While the Hoysalas later patronized some major Tamil temple centers, the initial decades of the conquest were chaotic. In the Cholas, historian K. Neelakanta Shastri shows that they ransacked many temples and carried off their treasures and idols. Warrior elites continued to migrate into Tamil Nadu in the next century. In 1311, the Delhi general Malik Kafur caused much chaos through his raids, and a brief, rapacious sultanate was established in Madurai. Isolated from the currents of manpower and housepower, more in this video here, that kept the Delhi Sultanate afloat, the Madurai Sultanate was, in its turn, conquered by the new Deccan Empire of Vijayanagara in 1371. And Vijayanagara once again brought with it a large number of Kannada military elites, as well as Telugu peasant warriors who settled into the black soil regions of Tamil Nadu, including Salem, Coimbatore, Tirunelveli, and Madurai. It was only in the 15th century that the tide of military migration finally slowed. But the end of migration didn't mean a return to business as usual. Collective negotiation, a tactic first used by landlords, was picked up by many nascent castes in medieval Tamil Nadu. They used it to protect or improve their prospects in difficult times. In the 12th century, writes historian Y. Subbarayulu, in South India under the Cholas, cultivators of Vellala community negotiated with their Brahmin landlords to reduce levies and to confirm their higher status over artisans. In other areas, artisan collectives, formerly segregated into separate villages, obtained Brahmin recognition as a twice-born caste. This was tied by historian Vijaya Ramaswamy in her paper Vishwakarma, Craftsmen in Early Medieval Peninsular India. And as Chola power disintegrated in the 13th century, large coalitions of caste-like groups decided on taxes, security fees, and social hierarchies, as Karashima writes in Ancient to Medieval. In the 15th century, after generations of warrior migration, socioeconomic crisis was looming. In the New Cambridge History of India, Vijayanagara, historian Burton Stein shows that immigrant Vijayanagara warriors such as the Sadhava dynasty established fortresses like Chandagiri in the uplands and demanded taxes from the Coromandel plains. Seeking to play a role in the politics of the imperial center in the Deccan, they were focused primarily on enriching themselves. This is revealed by temple inscriptions spread across the Kaveri Delta as well as the northern Coromandel plain. In South Indian history and society, Karashima studied inscriptions made by the Brahmin assembly at Ukkal, which is present-day Magaral, and found that they were forced to sell their lands to outsiders in order to meet revenue impositions. Other Brahmins and Vellalas collaborated with Vijayanagara officials. Some of these officials were locals, others were immigrants who purchased tax farming rights. These tax farmers could be merciless in trying to recoup their costs. In one case, Karashima points out that the rate of tax went up tenfold from 200 to 2,000 coins a year. And the burden of this taxation was often forced upon artisan and trader communities, which led to unprecedented class and caste solidarity. The Valangai or right hand and Idangai or left hand caste coalitions, meeting in a series of assemblies throughout the 1420s, complained of excessive impositions by officials. They came up with their own, more favorable rates and threatened to degrade the caste of any coalition members who complied with royal authority. In other cases, they outright fled in protest. Their cause was also taken up by Brahmins, Vellalas, and Shaivite and Vaishnavite religious orders. These moves were successful, but only to an extent. The Vijayanagara rulers, faced with a fait accompli, were forced to agree to lower tax burdens. But as late as the 16th century, there were still scattered instances of overtaxation. Other communities were better off under Vijayanagara rule. Global trade continued to steadily rise throughout this period, thanks partially to Chinese and European expeditions in the ocean. More in these videos here. This worked in favor of the Kaikolhar weaver community. They asked for and received caste privileges from Vijayanagara officials, such as the right to ride a palanquin and to blow a conch shell. Throughout the 16th century, a series of Vijayanagara military men called Nayakas carved out small principalities in Tamil Nadu. The collapse of Vijayanagara power at the end of the century finally leveled the odds, prompting Nayakas and their subjects to reach new accommodations. This would lead to a cultural fluorescence in early modern Tamil Nadu, a dynamic we will explore in future editions of Thinking Medieval. I'm sure there's a bit of a controversial opinion, so if you have questions or comments, we'd love to hear them. Follow us everywhere on social media. You can find me on Instagram at Anirudh and at Connected Histories and on Twitter at Kanisetti. We'll see you next week.